If you're like me and you've been wandering through the post-live service content desert that is Civ 6, then this may be the clickbait video for you. I say this half-jokingly because the game has had an incredible period of development time and a lengthy patch history. However, I've always been of the opinion that the community has a quirky modding scene, with a majority of the more popular mods being located on the Steam Workshop. Furthermore, a lot of the modded content consists of balance changes, quality of life updates, or UI overhauls. Sucretact is one of the more prolific modders, and he has been working on Civ 6 mods non-stop since release. The focus of this video is breaking down urban identities, which I'll be getting to in a moment, but in addition to this mod, he has also tackled new leaders, interface changes, and even new resource packs. You may know Sucretact from his exceedingly popular Oceans mod that I've covered in the past, which aims to liven up coastal tiles by adding a new game mode that changes maritime economies. But as of last week, he has released Urban Identities, which takes an axe to traditional city planning. Urban Identities is another new gameplay mode that focuses on shaking up the core gameplay loop, this time with a twist. For some context, the new Frontier Pass was first introduced in May of 2020, and while it was known for its different approach to new content, in some ways more than others, it also had two big changes. The first of which I have already mentioned, the addition of game modes, but the second is one that is more central to this mod: negative modifiers. Leaders like Lady Six Sky were new for Civ 6. For example, her ability, which grants bonuses to cities close to her capital, also penalizes cities further than 6 tiles away. While few civs punish you for playing a certain way, Sucretact's mod shakes things up by rewarding individual cities for following specific playstyles. In other words, malices are used to shift the player in a certain direction that isn't typically afforded to the unmodded base game. When you start a new game with Urban Identities installed, the first noticeable change is the addition of new regions to the map. Unique can be a subjective word, but a lot of the districts I have built with this mod installed have varied greatly depending on the region I'm playing in. Let me break it down. Aside from the highly critiqued graphics, one of the biggest changes coming from Civ 5 to Civ 6 has been the inclusion of districts. While they were intended to add more complexity to the internal development of cities, some people felt that they made cities too similar to one another because they followed a strict set of adjacency bonuses. As a consequence of this, many of the more interesting Civ picks tend to be choices like the Maya, which change city layout drastically. At least for me, I've been neglectful of some of the older Civs, because while they can still be fun to play, a lot of the vanilla leaders don't interact enough with map features to my liking, which leads me to my next point. All of this talk is leading to a core feature of Urban Identities: unique region modifiers. I'll provide more specific examples with screenshots, but regions generally play like they do in Humankind, with areas having corresponding modifiers to their locations. Many other people have made similar comparisons, but I want to go on the record in saying that the dev himself says that Against the Storm was the inspiration for regions, not Humankind. To give a better example of this, let's look at the Hamab Desert. Typically, when settling in deserts, you don't have access to much unless you're playing as a certain gold-obsessed fiend, but regions can also enable gameplay changes. With the Underground Aquifers bonus, you are able to build farms on desert tiles, and they also receive a +1 bonus to food along with plantations, as a trade-off for settling in a harsher region. Now, not all regions are made equal, and you may find yourself ignoring some modifiers altogether depending on your playstyle and choice of civ. With one exception that I'll get to later, I found that the amount of different region types are quite varied, with their bonuses and malices leading to more nuanced city planning. Don't get me wrong, you can go hog wild with Germany and some aqueducts in the base game, but I've also enjoyed countries that focus on a very different aspect of the game, like Norway and raiding, to have a more interesting city planning phase. A lot of the content additions to the Steam Workshop are great, but I found that the more a modder tries to add to the complexity of the game, the harder it is for the AI to keep up. It's no secret that Firaxis wasn't cooking when the AI premiered back in 2016, but subsequent patches haven't really done much to shake up the ecosystem. One of the reasons that so many content creators set out to play deity-level playthroughs is partly due to the game's poor understanding of city planning, and a lot of mods fail to address this in my opinion. City Lights, for example, is one of my favorite mods for Civ 6, and it's the reason that I started the channel in the first place. It adds sweeping new modifiers with dozens of different unique districts, and while it's a beautifully designed mod, the AI has always struggled to build better cities. Because it's hard to fundamentally change the way that the AI interacts with the game, you have to be very careful when designing content around city placement. Sucretact's mods tend to favor a variety of smaller changes to gently push the game in one direction, trying to stay close to the vanilla experience. I've mentioned this earlier, but the bonuses that Urban Identities provide can also tend to have large asterisks. By this, I mean that there can be penalties to accompany some of the more prominent modifiers. Geyser Field, which is another unique regional identity, gives major adjacency bonuses to theater squares adjacent to geothermal fissures, which really helps early game if you are lacking on wonder production. It also provides +1 culture to fissures in the region, giving you a head start on civics. Where things change, however, is that you won't be receiving the typical +1 science that geothermal fissures typically afford. This may seem like a very small and insignificant change, but if you're playing certain civs like Hungary that have a bias for specific start conditions, then you may very well alter your typical playstyle. To top things off, regions can evolve as you play. Geyserfield provides a few initial changes, but you may want to consider beelining conservation for the improved tourism. Once you settle on a region tile, the region will update to display that it has been claimed by a certain city. If someone has already settled in the region, new cities will not receive the bonuses. In some of my sample games, I found that the AI didn't seem to know that regions were present, and prioritized other tiles. This can be hilarious at times because they'll put down their cities one tile adjacent to the region, leaving you to snag it at the last minute. In total, this mod has around 25 regional identities, being broken up into geothermal, reef, plains, jungle, hills, and even river regions, with a few more that I haven't mentioned. Coastal regions have further integration with Sucredac's Oceans mod, taking note of the unique kelp forest feature and having related modifiers. There are even additional plans to add ways that you can develop and even change your city's identity later on. Right now, the mod may seem bare bones in some regions, pun intended, but it is very much in an open beta state of development. I can understand why the dev did this, partly to test the waters, and I imagine that it also provides a lot of guidance for future dev time. The mod has already received 2 patches, one for multiplayer related bug fixes and one covering something else altogether, so I trust the development will be fairly active in the future. On the contrary, I also have a few reservations about urban identities. For one, the max amount of region that you can set for your game to have is equal to 30% of the map. I haven't found an issue with playing on larger maps, so region quantity may not be a reason for this cap, but it still perplexes me. Often, I find that I will have starts where there are no nearby regions whatsoever, and I feel like I'm missing out on a major component of the mod. Coastal civs seem to be particularly hindered by this in my experience. Anecdotally, I have started up about 50 or so Portugal games to see how starts panned out, and a fair amount of the time I have spawned in areas with no regions to speak of. When playing games where I don't have a coastal bias, I found that region placement is much more reliable and better spread out. Now, I could have one of the worst cases of bad luck, but as someone with restartitis, urban identities hasn't been helping. My theory behind this is that there aren't as many coastal regions to start with, which limits the possible placements for more water-heavy areas. The most common area I have come across has been sturdy reeds, which is an interesting integration with the Oceans mod. In fact, there has been a shocking amount of new updates to some older resource mods that have been integrated into Sucredac's work. For example, I've already seen several of JNR's mods updated to be compatible with urban identities. In one of my games, I've even seen the new silvopasture identity that he has implemented. So, to put it into words, I think the mod has a bright future if it sees continued support, judging by the positive outreach from the community. But, getting back to Portugal, some of the individual regional identities may need another pass over. As an individual modder, it can be a Herculean task to try and balance every single feature without QA testing, but I did have some mild nitpicks. For example, the Vantage Points identity felt like one of the weakest regions in the game. In order to activate it, you must first build an encampment and then train a ranged or recon unit to receive the bonus. The bonus is decent, being a free promotion, but if you are training a unit that is already starting with a free promotion, then they do not receive it. Encampments are already out of the way, and I wish that there was some kind of reward for more passive players that typically don't wage war frequently. Comparatively, some regional identities like Cloud Forest feel incredibly powerful. Granted, not every civ may benefit from these bonuses, but if you're playing with someone like Coupe, this could get out of hand very quickly. As late as education, you could see several tiles with +1 culture, faith, and science, which can be a very big boost in the early game depending on region size. There is a malice to lumber mills, but they come so much later than the initial bonuses that I don't think it's going to be a huge setback. What's more, these yields are doubled at conservation. I've said it before, but I'm really impressed with the modder's outreach, and he has been actively putting out patches since release, which is no small feat. This is also not the end for urban identities, with more updates planned potentially with new features. One of these new features is urban identities, which is of course the title of the mod. We've talked on end about regional identities, but urban identities are different. It seems that the plan from Sucredac is to see how well the mod performs, and then to adjust things accordingly. Urban identities will be a new way for cities to either change their current identity or choose a new one altogether. I think this would really open up the game to more varied city builds from what we've already seen, and I can't wait to see how things go from here. For the second part of the video, I wanted to show everyone how to install the mod and play it on Steam. To do this, I've included a link to the mod on the Steam Workshop down below, which you'll need to play. Do note, some of the other mods I've talked about in this video are separate from urban identities, and I will also list them in the description if you wish to play them. If you click on the link, you should be able to find the mod fairly quickly, but if that doesn't work for whatever reason, you should be able to type it in the Steam Workshop, just simply Urban Identities or Sucredac, and find the author's name and get the mod through there. As you can see here, it is incorporated with the Civilopedia, so if you need to look up any regions or any specific gameplay terms, you can quite quickly. But that really is it for the mod here. Really, installing mods on Steam is fairly straightforward. Right down there, you can see the comments. I'm subscribed currently, but I'll unsubscribe. You should see, if you're logged in, the subscribe button. Once you click on it, you will simply have it downloaded directly to your Steam gameplay file, and that will be applied to any future games that you start the game up with. So you can see that I'm in the game right now just to start it up and make sure that everything is working. Before I click create game, I'm actually going to go to additional content, and then I'm going to click on mods. Once you're at the mods page, just to get to the mod quicker, I'll turn off official content, and then as you can see, this is purely community created content. Now I have a lot of mods, but I'm going to look for urban identities, and I'll just simply type in urban identities. Oops. If I can type correctly. And you can see here that Sukudak's urban identities are enabled. Now, if you are having any issues with the mod itself, it looks like he's actually already credited some of the other modders, which is nice. But if you are looking at the mod here and it's not working for whatever reason, but it says it's enabled, I would first try disabling the mod and then re-enabling it. And then if that doesn't work, I would then check the Steam comments and make sure that there are no conflicts with any other mods. At the moment, I believe there are a few conflicts with some of the unpatched resource mods, but I'm not too sure exactly what those are. Now that I'm back on the home page and I have single player clicked, I'm going to go to create a game. And then you can see right here, I have the new Urban Identities mod installed. So I can click that, and then the Urban Identities or the regions will be in my new game. That's going to be it for today's video. If you like this video and like to see me getting back into Civ 6, I'll also be covering Civ 7 when it premieres next week, and I'll be doing a few analysis videos on that. So if you want to see that, again, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and stay posted. I also upload a number of community posts to this tab here. So if you are interested, again, I will be actively covering Civ 7 and other games too, like CK3 as things develop. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you all later. All right, peace.